let's talk composition. Composition is how you compose something. So a lot of our arts have some form of composition. You've heard of a composer, a musical composer. He composes music. There are different compositions to dance, especially formal dance. There's different compositions to creative writing, even to cooking. You can find different compositions in certain meals. And so we are going to explore what composition means for the visual arts. And so composition is just a way, it's sort of a set of rules that you can use to make your stuff better. Let's talk about the golden spiral. The golden spiral is your first compositional secret or rule, and it is based on the Fibonacci sequence, which states that one number plus the number after it equals a number, and then that number plus the previous one, so it goes on and on. So 0 plus 1 is 1, 1 plus 1 is 2, 2 plus 3 is 5, 3 plus 5 is 8. And so there's a sequence. This is called phi, if you're into math. Fibonacci actually did not discover this sequence. They've actually figured out that that Indians discovered this in the ancient world, or whatever you want to say it was. He just sort of brought it to light and made it and realized its value. And so he figured out that this sequence of things was found a lot in nature. And so it became the golden ratio. And it's a ratio of 1 to 1.618. And let's take a look and see what that ratio is found in. We have a lot of this in our Earth. You have it from the spiral of the galaxy to the petals in flowers, to the eye of the hurricane spiraling outward, even down to the proportions of our face, conch shells, the curve of the brain. So how did we get this spiral? This spiral is based off of Fibonacci sequence. So they start with a rectangle. That is that ratio, that 1 to 1.618, and then they divide it in on itself. Okay, so if you look, 1 plus 1 is 2, and then you get 3, and then you go out to 5, and that sort of thing. So it's sort of, all these ratios are relative to each other, and so this ratio sort of spirals in on itself. So we've got this spiral called the golden spiral, and we find it all over the place. A lot of it is, thought to reference intelligent design. So we have artists who took this and said, well, if we find this all over the earth, then that means in creation that it inherently, this ratio is more pleasing to the eye. These things are a balance of things. It's a very pleasing ratio. So let's use it in our work. So you have the Greeks using it in their structures. So if this building hasn't been crumbled yet, if you complete it, you can see where they are using the Fibonacci sequence or phi to use this ratio to get the proportions of this building. You can see how photographers use it. Even here in the wave, this artist used this curve for the wave itself. And a lot of your master artists use this concept in their artwork, and that's sort of what made them master artists. It made their artwork more attractive to people, and that's how they got to be master artists. They mastered their craft. So we have Da Vinci using this in the Mona Lisa, and you can look how he used it from the chin to the top of the head to find certain proportions. And then, we find it all over the place. We even find it in product design and graphic design. You have people using this and saying, well, if it is inherently pleasing, we want our products to sell. We want people to find our products pleasing and want to buy them. And so we have product designers who come in and use these proportions when they design their logos or their products. We have graphic designers using logos. You can see the different circles that are created, the different sizes. All these circles that are used in the Apple logo are relative to one another. They are part of this golden ratio sequence. Now, if you'll click here where it says, click here to travel to Canva's graphic design training. Canva is an online website where you can go and design posters and all kind of cool stuff. They'll let you do some of it for free. They actually have some graphic design training, and they'll show you how their designers have used these principles in designing all their graphics. So anything from logos just to complete poster designs, any advertisements, the good graphic designers are going to use these principles. So this leads us to the golden section, And the problem with the golden spiral is you have to start out with a rectangle that is that 1 to 1.618 ratio. And so a lot of our paper is not that ratio, and so it's sometimes really hard to map out that golden spiral. So a lot of people or mathematicians, artists, have sat down and figured out, well, if we take our painting that we have and we divide it into 8 sections, vertically and then horizontally, and you put lines on the 3/8 and 5/8 division, then you will create something that is very close to having those relationships. So this is an easier thing to do. Sometimes artists call this the 3/8 and 5/8 rule. It's just a lot easier to find than having to map out that perfectly ratioed rectangle and then find the spiral that sort of implodes on itself. So this is one thing you can do. Let's see how artists have used it. This is Seurat. He used this for this shoreline in the back. This is on the 3/8 line. You've got this guy sitting, his feet are on the 5/8 line. And so it just helps create some sense of order to the painting. There's a lot of other compositional things that are happening in this, but that's definitely one of them. Is he is using the 3/8 5/8 rule. And then again here, same artist, down here, the shoreline in the back is 3/8, and then this pier is 5/8, and then the sail is actually on the 5/8 section. And then here you think, okay, this is a portrait of God and his angels. So you have God taking up 5/8 of this frame, and then you have one of his angels taking up the 5/8 line. And then down here we have a line on the 3/8 and on the 5/8. And so again, these things just help give your painting structure. Then we have the golden triangle. So if you find the diagonal of the whole, what's the diagonal of the whole? I'm talking the diagonal of the whole picture. So here's our whole picture. This is the rectangle. This is our canvas. You find the diagonal of the whole piece. And it doesn't matter from what corner you draw. You're going to then drop down a line that is perpendicular. So it is, I can put that little symbol for the 90 degrees. You're creating a 90-degree angle right here. And so then you've got these triangles happening and these different angles on the canvas. Over here we have this happening in this blue man, and this man looks his proportions are very exaggerated, and it's because Picasso wanted to use the golden triangles. He purposely did this to have better composition. So even though he has crazy proportions, it's a pretty solid piece. So you can do this from any corner. This has a lot of lines drawn over the top of it. Basically, you can find the diagonal of the whole from all 4 corners, and then from all 4 corners you can also find the perpendicular. And so that's why you have all these lines mapped out throughout this painting. We have Degas, and he used some of these triangular relationships in his ballerinas. He loved to paint ballerinas, and so we've got some of those structural things happening. You see how there's a foot here on this diagonal. Her other foot helps. You're not strictly confined to these lines. They're just a guiding line for your stuff. So her body is here. You've got this girl's legs there. Then we have the rule of thirds. I'm sorry, this flipped before it was time. This is the kiss, and hopefully you've seen this. This is one of the most famous photographs in the world, and the story behind this is kind of cool, kind of awkward. I've heard actually 3 different stories to this scene, and they finally put together the truth, supposedly. I'll let you click on the photograph to read the story behind it. It's quite interesting. But this is when the war was over. The whole Pearl Harbor thing took place. And so we have these people in the street, and this photographer, photographers have to be ready at any moment. And he just happened to look up, and you can see why this is such a solid piece. Not only just the focal points, and there's a lot of things other than just the golden triangles happening, but the diagonal of the sailor's body, the diagonal of everybody thought she was a nurse. She was actually a dental hygienist. The diagonal of her body, all these different things, the point of the kiss down here on this angle. There's a lot of things that are lined up with this picture that just make it really solid. And hopefully you'll click on that and read. And then we have rule of thirds. This is what I like to refer to as a lazy man's golden section. So you're not having to find the 3/8 and 5/8. You simply just draw a tic-tac-toe grid, so to speak. It's your lines are all equidistant, and you line stuff up according to those lines. Now, the cool thing is on your phone, and if you own a camera, in the preferences, you can go in and mark to display grid lines, and it is going to display the rule of thirds grid. And so that's going to help you line things up at points of interest where lines intersect. Those are always sweet spots. A lot of times we'll have some instead of putting your horizon line in the middle of the page, a lot of artists like to put it on the top third or bottom third. Let's take a look at some artwork that does this. This sketch, first of all, this is not very interesting. It's in the middle. It doesn't leave a lot up to the imagination. And just my eyes stay right here in the middle. It doesn't lead me anywhere else. So if we use these lines as points of interest, we see here that the lighthouse is on that intersection and on this vertical line. And it just makes it a much better composition. This one is even better. You've got your horizon line on that top line, and then you've got the point of interest there. And then you can see photographers here and here using this concept. This picture of the sharecroppers, the people in the foreground are on this, close to this sweet spot, and then you've got the crash plane back here on this intersection. And then again, the candlestick and the vase. Repetition of the format. Let's explain what format means. Format means the overall shape of your art. It can be square, it can be oval, it can be rectangular. Whatever your format is, that is what you are going to repeat in your piece. So if you'll look, this is almost a square format. The artist has hidden that in this piece. You can almost see one here, and probably in the relationship of the fruit also. So there's little places hidden all over where this artist is repeating the format. Up here in the top left corner, it's also almost a square. You've got the two guys playing cards, and in between them is that same size, that same ratio of shape to our overall format. And then we have this down here in the table also. So artists like to hide this in their artwork, and it just helps to solidify things. And then oval, you come in, anytime you add a shape to give yourself a guideline for your objects, that's going to help out. You can see an oval through here. Even the oval in the basket. You actually have a repetition of these ovals all over the place. Triangles. Da Vinci did this in the Mona Lisa, and then in Christ's pose here in the Last Supper, and then over here with this still life. You almost connect rounded objects. There's a lot of rounded objects, but you got the flower here, this anchoring your eye here. So this flower is the topmost focal point, bottom left most focal point, bottom right most focal point. And so you have this triangular thing happening. And then over to this picture here, you're probably thinking, what is triangular for this? Well, the artist purposefully made the brightest spots part of the focal areas. So you go from the cup to the plate to the book. Or you could go to the picture on the wall to the plate to the book. Either way, it works. And then you have photographers using this as well. You've got, to the moon, to the reflection down here, to the reflection there. A lot of, family poses are in that triangular shape. And then you've got just simple rectangles. That coincides with the repetition of the format. S-curves are mostly found in nature scenes. They're in objects that are more organic. So you've got this path here that's an S-curve. And it doesn't have to be a strict, like this is a very strict S. It can be very stretched out and very faint. So here, we've got some things happening with those S-curves that are found in here. And sometimes artists will put several S-curves back to back. And then we have the poses, the flow, your visual flow here, how it takes us down his back, down the angle to his hand, and back to the feet. Here's another pose. It's a very loosely based S-curve. Then you've got your sculptures that have an S-curve type pose. And then here's our flower again. There's actually sort of an S-curve that happens when you flow around objects. Cruciform refers to the cross. It's not that you are strictly trying to make a cross, but these flowers are in that cross shape. It's a cruciform. So there's another cruciform. And framing compositions, you can have formal frames and informal frames. Formal frames are very obvious. This is very obviously framed up with whatever they're standing under to take this photo. A lot of times people will do weird cool things, like put a cup in front of their lens, or maybe they're standing under something, but that's more of a formal, intentional frame. So is this, the circle behind this guy, that is a formal frame. And then you have informal frame. It's not so obvious. You got the window here, here's the curtain, she is framed up there in the middle, and then this one is not so obvious either, but the darkness of this is Vermeer, both of these paintings are Vermeer. He's so dark right here, he stops our vision from going much further into this area, and then this curtain stops our vision from moving out here. You got this dark area, so it is framing up this girl in the middle. So I've pinned 2 sheets that show you how to use shapes in your compositions. There are so many rules to composition. A lot of artists combine rules. You know, as long as you have some sort of structure to your piece to make it stronger, that's what we're looking for. Some of these I didn't quite go over. Steel yard is where you have something bigger and something smaller, but somehow you still balance the weight of it. You see how this is a little bit darker than this? It looks just as heavy as this because it's darker. Or sometimes you have to shove them inward. This is shoved inward, and this one's right on the side, so it's bringing us back down, you know, so it's got a visual balance. Things do not have to be symmetrical to have a visual balance. This has a visual balance as well. Oh, this is, you see the scales here. This is more symmetrical. It's more balanced, formally balanced. And then you see there's some S-curves and circles or ovals. So these are just for your information, because there's a lot of stuff to gather for teaching composition. What I want you to do is to take the sheet that you were given in class, and you can work this several ways. You can either draw directly onto that sheet and then tape it into your sketchbook, or you can trace those compositional guidelines into your sketchbook and work directly in your sketchbook. You're going to draw thumbnails, and you're going to try to arrange your objects according to that particular compositional rule. For like triangle, you're not strictly confined to, oh, everything's got to follow this angle. Okay, remember, you know, things, you've got to flow to your artwork. What's going to make my eye flow from here to the top of the oval, to the side of the oval, to the bottom? Okay, so ask yourself those questions. I'm not looking for detailed drawings. These are thumbnail sketches. They're super simple. They're a simple way to plan out your artwork so that it's much stronger. But I want you to try this. The only one that you may have trouble with, and it's the hardest one, it is that golden spiral that we talked about, because you have to have that ratio rectangle for this to work. If you don't have this ratio of rectangle, the spiral will not happen. And I can teach you how to draw this in class. It's kind of complicated, not terribly so, but kind of is. The thing about the golden spiral, and really, yeah, mainly the golden spiral, you do not have to have this rectangle. This does not have to be your format or your overall canvas. Like we saw in Da Vinci, he had, and you can turn this, by the way. It can be, you can have the spiral going another direction. It can, this whole spiral can be going vertically. It doesn't matter as long as it is that ratio of rectangle. But Da Vinci used it in the Mona Lisa, and he strictly used it on her face for the most part. So you don't have to have that ratio piece of paper or canvas. But when you go to do your thumbnail sketch, you will have to probably trace that one so that you can get the correct ratio and the spiral for it. It's complicated, so do trace that. And I've given you some more examples of how my students in the past have used this to create interest. You can see how she utilized the spiral with the trees that lead your eye from here and on around into the house. So take these. What you can do, I've posted 2 slides that have some of Cézanne's work. Cézanne was a post-impressionist. He pretty much paved the way for Cubism. So they consider him the father of the Cubists, because people like Picasso were very, very inspired by his artwork. The way that he started to flatten things and make, you know, the wrinkles aren't as delicate. They're more geometric and that sort of thing. So they were very inspired by his work. But because he simplified his objects, he may be a good one to take. And when you go to sketch out your stuff, say, okay, I'm going to use this little jar here on, you know, the rule of thirds and that sweet spot, that intersection. I'm going to use some apples here, oranges. And he already has some things happening in his artwork. I already see a triangular thing happening. Don't directly copy these. I want you to rearrange the objects for your own thumbnail sketches. And you don't have to use these, but I put these here for inspiration. He even simplified faces to only just a few planes. So there's only a few planes to the face. It's not, you know, 2, 3. He's sort of made it a little more geometric, and it's not as these delicate curves. So again, here's another slide with some things, and you can see in this picture how he is using the trees for framing things up. So this is an informal frame. He is in a triangular pose. Here's the diagonal of the hole. You know, maybe, I bet his body, yep, his body here, if we tried to find that perpendicular, he's got some angles that are helping there. So Cezanne very much adhered to some of these compositional rules. Again, that's kind of what made him great. You don't have to strictly adhere to them, but you need some sort of structure to your artwork. So we're going to practice this.